Hello everyone and welcome to Werven's World. Today I would like to give 5 tips for beginning players for Creeper World 3 Arc Eternal. Creeper World 3 is a very interesting tower defense game. It's really one of my favorites because it puts a very cool twist on the tower defense genre, is that you don't just have monsters walking a set path, but there's like this creep that basically builds up and acts like a liquid and wants to take over your base. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. And tip number 1 is realizing that this game is actually a 3D game. So as you can see here, there's this creeper and it's kind of in a crater. So if you hover over that stuff, you see kind of this meter. You can see how deep the creep is. And you can take advantage of this. For example, a pulse cannon, I think it's called, it shoots basically just some creep away, but it only shoots one level of creep away. But it's very good at that. A mortar, however, as you can see here, it basically makes a hole into the creep. So let's say you have a lot of layers of creep, it blows away a lot of layers. So while a mortar is less good against single layers of creeps, it's vastly better at eliminating multiple layers of creep at once. For example, here it's just annihilating all this creeper in the crater. So make sure to use this height meter to find out how deep a certain creep is in order to know which weapons you should build, for example, a cannon versus a mortar. Tip number 2 deals with the mobility of your buildings. Actually, your turrets you can actually move. This when I was playing the game, it took me a long time to figure out, or I just didn't know, and at some point it just happened, and I was like, huh, you can actually move these things, and that's actually very useful. For example, as you can see here, I moved a turret in order to clear some creeper away in order to put a nullifier there. However, be careful because now I moved this turret and the problem was that it was connecting other buildings together. So by removing that turret, I broke the chain, and basically buildings didn't get supplied anymore. So be careful. However, this moving can be very useful. I especially like it for the fact that basically I can build something in my base, I can fill it up with ammo, and then I can move it to a danger zone. Because if you would try and build it in a danger zone, it takes some time and it might be not in time, and then your buildings get destroyed and then you have to start all over again. So by moving turrets, you can really basically be more efficient. Furthermore, you can really decide where exactly you want to attack. If you didn't build it in exactly the right spot, well, just move it a bit. This is a very handy game mechanic. Tip number 3 deals with power zones. So when you destroy an emitter, you have this blue circle, and you can actually build buildings on there. And those blue circles, they do different things depending on which building you built on there. For example, mostly if you put on weapons on there, they basically just get bigger range, more fire rate, all that kind of stuff. You really get super weapons, and they can be extremely handy. For example, once you get one of these power zones on the front line, you just build a cannon or a mortar there, and they will absolutely annihilate any creeper that's nearby, which is and far away because their range also increases. Um, Another thing I really like to do with them is if they're kind of in the not in the front line but in the back, not anywhere where they can shoot at things, you can put a reactor there. And why I say this is because, well, the game is not very clear about what these power zones do. But if you put a reactor on there, they normally already give more energy than collectors. But if you put them on a power zone, they give 10 times power. So yeah, they just give you a humongous power boost if you put them in there, which is really nice to have. There is one weapon that works especially well with these power zones. You'll get, I think you get it in World 4 if I remember correctly, but I won't spoil too much. But once you see the word Bertha, just put it on there and see it annihilate everything. It's really good. You can also put, for example, relays on there. So relays are basically the same as collectors, except they don't give you energy, but they connect stuff together. But they have more range, so they can connect further, and they deliver packages faster. If you put them on one of these power zones, they get much more range to connect other relays. This is especially handy on levels where there's islands, so you can easily connect the islands together if you put a relay on one of those power zones. So be sure to use the power zones, be sure to experiment with it. Most of the buildings, not all of them, have an effect on the power zones, but it's not very well described in game. But yeah, just try out, and they're really fun. And tip number 4 is about turps. So at some point in the game, you will get a terp, which is basically a terraforming machine. And terraforming means that you can build in 3D space. So basically, you can build walls and all that. And that's also how the game teaches you to use it. For example, here, this is the level where you get it. You can see that there's these walls surrounding me, but they're broken up. So when you use the height meter, you can measure how high these walls are, and basically you can just um, tell the terp then like to repair these walls. However, that's not all it can do. It has one more function that I absolutely love, and that's basically here in the middle. You see this platform, but I can't really build on it much because it's kind of broken up. And the cool thing about that is that you can just use a terp to fill it up. So if you use the height meter and you see how high the platform is, then you just use that number, you click on the empty spaces, and basically the terp takes care of everything. So it basically just fills it all up, and afterwards you can build on it. As you can see in this level, it's not that amazing because I don't really need to have any turrets in the middle or something, but it's just to point out how to use the terps for additional effect. And tip number 5 is about energy management. So your base has a energy number, and that's basically the amount of packages, energy packages it sends out per second. Every building that you build needs 1 package per second, and thus if you build more than you have energy for, you're going to have an energy deficit, and everything will be less efficient. As you can see here, I've got this command center building 8 collectors at the same time, and it takes me 30 seconds of mission time. However, if I do it in another way, basically only building when I have enough energy, then it only takes me 23 seconds. And a good rule of thumb for this is to only build as many buildings as you have a energy collection rate. So let's say you collect 2 packages of energy per second, then you can build 2 buildings. If you collect 6 energy per second, then you can build 6 buildings. Of course, it's a bit of a rule of thumb, and it's sometimes okay to go into the minus a bit and all of that. But as you can see here, just by doing it a bit more efficiently, it takes me 23 seconds instead of 30 seconds, which is a huge improvement because the early game matters quite a lot in this game. What you should keep in mind is that energy packages also count as ammo. So if you've got a lot of guns shooting somewhere, then that takes away from your building power as well. So that means you have to choose very carefully which weapons you want. Let's say you put down 100 cannons, but 1 mortar would solve the job better. Then you're just wasting a lot of energy on ammo, which you could have been using on building, for example, reactors or relays or weapons on another front or stuff like that. So be careful with what you build, and yeah, so it's a good rule of thumb to take into account. Basically, if you collect 3 energy packages, you can build 3 things at the same time. So that were the 5 beginners tips. I hope they were useful. I know they're a bit basic, but yeah, at least these are basically the tips that really helped me getting started when I bought the game a while ago. So yeah, I hope you find it useful, and see you next time.